America today is known as the land of freedom and democracy, although this nation has originated from a very dark past. Before the Civil Rights Movement, African Americans were commonly victims of rape, assault, the KKK, enslavement and discrimination or racism. Black people were constantly kept at the bottom of the society. They were enslaved, uneducated, had no rights and generally had no place other than being slaves, commonly on farms. When they were shipped to America, they often died in boats because of how they were crammed onto boats with no space. Back in America, it was a place of never-ending oppression, and they were kept down at the bottom of society, below everyone else, just with the poor whites, while the wealthy ruled over them. There was no way to escape because of the position they were in and how they were trapped. As European colonisation grew and civilisations expanded, black people started to receive education, but not nearly as much as wealthy white people. Eventually, in the 1900s, there were huge surges of civil rights activists. The death of Emmett Till sparked lots of media attention in 1955. Rosa Parks gathered many more followers with her bus incident, and Martin Luther King with his speeches when he was assassinated in 1968. Mavis Staples' "We Shall Not Be Removed" was written about this time period. When Mavis states, "We are fighting for our children," this is symbolic of how blacks fought for future generations in hope that they will be able to ride transport freely, receive a quality education, walk town without discrimination, and to find better jobs other than being cotton farmers. Another interesting line from the song is, "Just like a tree that's standing by the water, we shall not be moved." This represents how the blacks were truly resilient and they stood for what they really wanted, that they would persevere through the tough time, and that no matter how many people the whites killed off, it would only make them stronger and make them continue their battle. However, the line I personally think is most interesting is, "Black and white together, we shall not be moved." Mavis shows us how even though the whites abused the blacks were merciful and did not get revenge on them. They were good people and respected the whites even after all that had happened. The Civil Rights Movement was one of, if not the biggest turning points in history. All that the civil rights activists had died for finally started to fulfill their battles. People were accepting blacks into society, and blacks were allowed in public without military escorts, were allowed on buses normally, and most importantly, had the rights of white men. In Boaz Yakin's movie, Remember the Titans, there is a scene where the blacks and whites are forced to sit on a bus in pairs, with white and black people being spread across the front and back of the bus randomly. This was to break up the segregation. This is reminiscent of how buses were really being desegregated after the Civil Rights Movement. Nobody had designated spots on buses, and everyone sat as they pleased. Another great scene from the movie that relates to the Civil Rights Movement is when Coach Boone wakes up the team at 3 a.m. and makes them run down to the Gettysburg Cemetery, where the Battle of Gettysburg took place. Coach Boone takes them there to show them that they're doing what the dead soldiers did, fight, and how that if they continued, they'd end up like the soldiers too, and that the soldiers would have died for no reason. Ultimately, like previously mentioned, the Civil Rights War is one of, if not the biggest turning points in history. It led to black styles of music like rap, rhythm and blues, and jazz, and led to some of the most influential people of all time to strive to where they are today, or were in the past. It has let blacks have real jobs, and they now live among us today side by side as our friends, peers, and teachers. But most importantly, it gave us all freedom.